we're starting is we're going to go through the Shalom Bayis. We basically have exhausted. You all have wonderful, beautiful marriages now, and your husbands are well behaved. So we've taken care of that. I'll just tell you one story, one last story I heard about Shalom Bayis, which it really, and I don't know if the story is supposedly true. I don't know if it is or isn't. It's supposedly true. Thank you. Apparently George Bush, when he was president, he and his wife were driving. The presidential entourage was driving, and they stopped off in a gas station, which I find hard to believe that they did. That the presidential limousine ran out of gas, but apparently they needed to fill it up. So they're at the gas station, and at the gas station, Mrs. Bush got out and she started schmoozing with the gas station attendant. So they finish up the, what do you call it, and she gets back in the car, and George Bush says to her, "Well, who was that guy?" She says, "Oh, just a guy, just a guy I dated in high school." So he starts laughing. George Bush starts laughing. He says, "What's so funny?" He says, "Well, you could have married a gas station attendant, and he ended up marrying the President of the United States." She says, "George, you got it all wrong. If I would have married him, he would have ended up the President of the United States." Right? So, which is true, by the way. I don't know if he would have ended up president, but Chazal say, "Heve Omer Hakol Bo Min Haisha." It all comes from the wife. Whatever the husband becomes, comes from the wife. So what we're going to do is, we're going to move off of Shalom Bayis now. I told you if anybody has any specific questions, you can feel free to contact me on the email. I'm usually good about getting back within 24 hours. What we're going to do is we're going to start from Bereshis, and we're going to go through slowly. We're going to move through the hashkafa, various hashkafa points that come from the Torah. Some of the points will repeat themselves in various parshas, but we'll try each time it repeats. We're going to try to open up different ideas and somehow get a rounded picture of life and life's many challenges. What some people call challenges, some people call opportunities. So the first one is the Medrash that says the Torah started with the word Bereshis, and the letter Aleph complained. The letter Aleph complained, "Why are you starting the Torah with Bereshis?" And HaKadosh Baruch Hu said to the letter Aleph, "Well, I have something different for you. You are going to start the Aseret Adibros, Anochi Hashem Elokecha." So, that's a consolation. It sounds like a consolation prize. Well, we started the Torah with Bereshis, but Anochi Hashem Elokecha, by the Aseret Adibros, that we're going to start with the Aleph. That's what the Medrash says. So like all Midrashim, it needs to be understood what's the Torah trying to convey. So one of the Farshim says like this: there were two major events in history. A major event number one is creation. A major event number two is the giving of the Torah. An Aleph takes priority over Beis. The word Aleph means, like in Hebrew, an Aluf is a general, an Aluf is a commander. Aleph takes precedence over Beis. So why are you using the second best one for creation? You're using Beis, which is the second rank. You're using Beis for creation. You're giving the top ranker, the one with the top rank, you're giving what do you call it? You're giving creation. You're giving the giving of the Torah. And the answer is that there are two events. One event is creation of the world, and the other event is the giving of the Torah. One Jew always has to know right from the outset, right from the get-go, that of the two events, the giving of the Torah is the bigger event, because the Torah, the chashivas of Torah, Talmud Torah, everything that goes with the Torah, that outweighs everything, including creation. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu made it t'nai with Ma'aseh Bereshis that if not for Klal Yisrael learning Torah, HaKadosh Baruch Hu would put the world back to Tova Vote. That's idea number one. Idea number two is that the Torah says that in the words Tohu Vavohu, the Torah says Tohu Vavohu. Where does the root of the word come from? So the Torah says that a person who would look at the nothingness of creation, there's something called nothingness, which we can't possibly understand what nothingness is. You won't know what nothingness is until you come into my Gemara Shir. Then when you see the guys in the room and the lack of response, then you will say nothingness, right? Then you will know what nothingness is. But until then, you can't possibly experience. What is the absence of anything? It doesn't mean just of it's the absence, so we don't understand. So Rashi says, and this needs to be understood. Rashi says that it's called tohu vavohu because a person is tohe umishtomem. A person is shocked. A person is awestruck by the nothingness. That's what he says. The person looks at, wow, that is an incredible amount of nothingness. So you will see this when you have children who are teenage males. And they're in yeshiva, Ketana, or yeshiva Gdola, And it's something that American, if you stay in Israel and you live in Israel, I'm not saying whether you should, but if you do, and you have, you'll see that male teenagers, especially in Israel, have the ability to sit for long periods of time and do absolutely nothing. Right? They just sit and do it. And I always wondered growing up, because I only had brothers, I always wondered, what do girls do? Right? What do girls do all day? What do they do? And then finally I learned that girls don't need much other than other girls. Right? And then all you can do is you basically sit and solve all the world's problems, right? You sit and you talk and girls can do that. Boys, we never did that. I always wanted to do something. I've seen my own boys, and yeshiva boys can sometimes sit and they don't even talk. They just sit, right? And there's almost like a wax museum, right? Except there's more action in the wax museum. And they just kind of sit. So as an active, more or less an active person, it drove me nuts in the beginning. I was like, talk lashon hara, do something. Don't just sit there. Do something productive. I don't care if it's negative, just do something. So that's what the Rashi says, that they're toa umishtome. Now, what's it got to do with our life? What's Tova Vote? The answer is that we were obviously put in this world to accomplish. And I heard a terrible story. You'll love it. There was a guy during the financial collapse, I think it was 2008, 2007. So a guy came to his Rav, and he said to his Rav, I have absolutely nothing to show for my last 25 years except my 45 minutes a night of Daf Yomi. That's what the guy said. I have nothing left to show except my Lord. Now, the truth of the matter is that when a person loses their money, so people are, the guy lost his money. It's a terrible, terrible ordeal. He lost his money. It's not just the worry. People think, he lost his money. What are you going to do for the future? You should know that it's much worse than that, and in certain ways, even worse than that, is not what are you going to do for the future. In the future, we'll work it out. You find another job. You're not going to starve to death. Nobody starves to death. Worse than anything is the present, because you're in a state of terrible embarrassment, terrible doubt, and even worse is the past. What did I do? Where did my life go? Where am I for the last 25 years? I don't exist. I have nothing left to show. For 25 years of my life, I've been a businessman, I've been hawking, I've been doing this, I've been doing that. I have nothing left to show for it. It's a terrible sense. I've lost my entire value. I once asked one of the heads of Or Sameach, one of the main fundraisers at the yeshiva, one of the Anhala members, Baruch Hashem, I make a bracha every day, Shalom, a sunny fundraiser. But there was one of the main Hanhola members. I once asked him, I don't understand. A guy's got $80 million. You go to ask the guy for money. He's got $80 million, a sach geld. And you ask the guy, well, the market's down. I haven't got anything to give you. I mean, the market's down, so you lost $1 million. That means you still got $79 million. You can't give anything to the yeshiva. I don't understand the show. Wait, you can't give? And if the market's up, they give. 80 million, 79, 81. What's the difference? What's the nafkamina? The answer is that a person who is into that type of world, it's a very interesting insight into human nature he gave you. A person who is living in that world, the money, the Karen, his basic amount of money, his $80 million, is who he is. When he makes a profit, so until he decides that profit now becomes part of the Karen, he's willing to give it away because that's profits. That's spare cash. Once that profit, the profits become part of who he is, he's not about to give that away. It'd be roughly the equivalent of knocking on a door and asking a guy, you're collecting for something for the yeshiva. Well, I can't. Well, why don't you cut off a finger or give us a finger? Nobody's going to cut off a piece of themselves to give to you. The man who's into that sort of world, he sees the money is actually a part of him. That's who I am. That defines me. Well, if that defines you, I'm not about to give that away. I have some extra care, some extra, Meister Geld, because I made some profits recently. Okay, as long as, while it's in the state that he sees it as profit, he'll give that away to you. Once it translates, I don't know when that point is, but once it hits the point of Karen, he's not about to give it away. A guy loses his money, he hasn't just lost his money, he's lost his essence. This is what I'm living for. This is who I am, and I've lost this. A guy told me Hurricane Sandy. Aren't all the disastrous hurricanes given women's names? Right? There's something about that. I'm not sure what that is, but it's interesting. Very telling. Very telling. It's never like Hurricane Bert. You ever get it? It's always some Amanda. Something nasty. Something really nasty. And so a guy said the family was in, what was the neighborhood? Seagate, wherever it was. The family, he told me his family and mom was wiped out. They built a home. Everything was flooded. So they were covered by insurance. They had all the insurance. Everything was covered. So he told me his cousin told his cousin, the husband and the wife, young couple with a couple of kids, they said, we got nothing. It's like we haven't existed for the last 5 years. We don't have any baby shoes. There are none of the sweaters, the baby pictures. It's all gone. Everything, we don't exist. That's Tova Vote. There's a lack of any sort of accomplishment whatsoever. That could be devastating to a human being. There's like, where was I? I don't have any proof for anything that I've done. That's Tova Vote. I remember when I was in 8th grade, our secular 8th grade teacher, she told us, I was an 8th grader, and I remember this was absolutely profound to me. I thought, what was that, 12 years old, 13 years old? I thought this was, she said if there was ever be a fire in her home, the first thing she would grab if she was running out is the family pictures, because the pictures can't be replaced. And I remember as a kid thinking, ooh, wow, that's so neat. And I was thinking to myself, I would grab my baseball glove for sure, right? Pictures. I know what I look like. I just need a mirror. My baseball glove is irreplaceable. I don't know what it. But it's the same sort of idea. Somebody loses pictures. Somebody has they're wiped out. People came out of the Holocaust. They have nothing, no remnants of their family. It's not in that situation. It's mamish a tragedy. That's the idea. So a person has to know the Tova Vote of the world is a reminder to us that's not what we're supposed to be doing. There is no such thing. Now, I heard a profound line. This Mrs. Rotman, whose husband was just nifter, her husband was just nifter from the Harnof. I called her the other day. So she was quoted in a magazine article, and this is one of the best quotes that I've seen, one of the best ideas that I've seen in years. Somebody said to her, because in the course of the year she had to keep going back and forth to the hospital to see her husband. It was every day she'd go to the hospital. Her husband wasn't really responding. And somebody said to her, once her husband died, I think somebody said, okay, now you're out of your state. You were in a state of limbo until now, and now you're out of your state of limbo. So she said a yesod. I don't think she realized herself how profound it was, but she said that she wasn't in a state of limbo. She wasn't in a state of limbo because every day that was the avoda of the day. And when I was thinking about it, I realized, this is the avoda of the day. The next day is the next avoda. You wake up in the morning, what's my avoda today? Not state of limbo. No state of limbo in life. And I realized you're either always in a state of limbo or you're never in a state of limbo. So you're in a state of limbo. I'm not married yet. I'm in a state of limbo. Now I am married, but I don't have kids yet. I'm in a state of limbo. Now I'm married and I have kids. My husband's a killed. We don't have enough parnasa. We're in a state of limbo. Person's not feeling well. I'm in a state of limbo until I start feeling better. We're always in a state of limbo. There's no end to when a person is in a state of limbo. My father and my husband and I haven't spoken to each other for a while. We're upset with each other. So we're in a state of limbo. Right? You're never in you're either always in a state of limbo or you're never in a state of limbo. How did you decide this is the state of limbo? I'm in a state of limbo and I don't have a good chavrusa. When I get a good chavrusa, then I won't be in a state of limbo. So there's no end to the state of limbo. So the answer is that the Torah Jew looks and gets up, and every single day we say, I have to accomplish. Today I have to accomplish. Today is my date. This is all I've got in front of me today. That's why it says later on, this week's parsha says, Avram Zokein Baba Yomim. Avram was an old man, and he was getting old. And it says he came along in days. Ba bayomim. It was a strange statement. Why does it say Avram Zokein ba bayomim? He came along with his days. So the Mefarshim, several Mefarshim explain, because every single day of his life he made the most of that day. And when he got older, he could look back at a lifetime of an accumulation of days. So a friend of mine, Rabbi Menachem Glick, is the Meshgiach at Beis Yisrael. So he gave a shmuz the other night. He said, imagine, do you people remember Kiddush HaChama? You remember the Kiddush HaChama where, I don't know what country you were in. Kiddush HaChama comes once every 28 years. Kiddush HaChama, right? Once every 28 years. I don't know where you were, but wherever you were, if you were there at Kiddush HaChama, you'll know where you were. You'll remember where you were. The two Kiddush HaChama, I remember both of them. Kiddush HaChama, once every 28 years. Would you miss Kiddush HaChama? Do you think there's any conscientious Jew who just forgot about it or missed it? I ain't missing this. Kiddush HaChama, I may not be good about everything else. Well, something comes up once every 28 years, that I'm not about to miss. Well, today only comes up once in a lifetime. Today, the day we're in right now, only comes up. If you miss today, you missed it for the whole lifetime. Kiddush HaChama, you'll make it up in 28 years. You'll be able to make it up. Don't worry, you just got 28 years. Today will never come back. Today will never come back. So you're worried about Kiddush HaChama? You're worried about what about today? That's Avram Zokein Bo Bayomim. Every single day has to be lived with whatever the production is for the day. There's a guy I read about once, an American, a guy he bought a Rubiks Cube. He bought a Rubiks Cube and he became absolutely crank in cup on this Rubiks Cube. And he said it took him 26 years till he finally solved the Rubiks Cube. His wife said that his whole life, he at the supper table, anytime they went to a wedding, family get-together, Christmas, everywhere he went, he never taught. All he did was play around with it, work out this road. It took him 26 years. Which is a shame because he could have gone to any little kid in Israel and have it done in about 4 minutes. But he went to 26 years. He went 26 years, he did on the Rubik's Cube. And finally he got it. Could you imagine such a thing? A guy spent 26 years on a Rubik's Cube and we think, hey, what a lunatic, right? He wasted his life on a Rubik's Cube. You know, there are people that are not that far away, even in our world. People that are, what did you waste your life on? 25 years, you accumulated money. In 25 years, it got wiped out. So what did you do? What do you have to show for it? That's the Tova Vote. So Rabbi Chanan Wasserman, Zatzal, Shemikim Domos, Rabbi Chanan Wasserman once went on a fundraising trip to America. And when he got to America, he was in Manhattan, and there was a Jew who had been in Baranovich. A Jew had been a little boy in Baranovich, had left Baranovich long before Rabbi Chanan, and went to America. He lived out the American dream, and he was secular. And he had a clothing factory. So Rabbi Chanan gets into a car, and he drives down to the factory, knocks on the door, Shalom Aleichem, Rav Wasserman, haven't seen you in a long time, they schmooze. He says, tell me, Rav Wasserman, what did you come here for? I mean, the Gvir knows darn well what he came here for. What did you come here for? So Rav Wasserman holds up his frock, and he shows him that one of the buttons is missing. He says, I came to have a button sewed on my frock. So the guy chuckles, he says, yeah, and he shmoozes a little more. He says, okay, Rabbi Wasserman, tell me what you've come for. He said, I came to have, and Rabbi Wasserman, Rabbi Chanan, was not a person who smiled a whole lot. He said, I came to have a button sewed onto my frock. So the guy says, Rabbi Wasserman, let me show you something. So he takes him downstairs to the factory area. He's got a factory, clothing factory, he's got 200 workers there. The guy's obviously rolling in the dough. And he says, this is all mine, Rabbi Wasserman. Now tell me, what have you come for? I just ask for it and I'll give you. Just tell me, what have you come for? And the guys in Baranovich, Yeshiva, they were starving. So Chanan says, I've come to have this button sewed on my frock. So he calls over one of the goyim. He says, hey, Stan, come over here. Take the rabbi's coat and sew on a button. So he sews on the button. Rabbi Chanan says, thank you very much. He turns around, takes his driver, and he goes downstairs. Okay. Next morning, Rabbi Chanan said, his chsania, the phone rings. The guy is livid on the other end. Rabbi Wasserman, you cost me an entire night's sleep. He says, I know you didn't come to have that button, so now I couldn't sleep all night. Now tell me, what did you come for? So he says, I'll come down to the office and I'll let you know. So he comes down to the office. The guy says, now tell me, what did you come here for? So Chanan says to him, you find it strange that I should have traveled across the Atlantic Ocean just to come here and have a button sewn on my clothing, right? You find it strange. Yes, I find it very strange. He goes, well, your neshama came down through 7 Rekiim into this world. That's a lot longer than from Baranovich to New York. You mean your neshama came down here just so it could sew buttons? That's what your neshama came down here? So the guy became a Baal Tshuva, he became a supporter of the Baranovich Yeshiva, and everybody lived happily ever after, right? That was the story. But the Musar Haskell is that we're here to accomplish. We're not here for the ride, we're here to accomplish. That's what we need a constant reminder of. The next part is something that's mamish nogea lemaisa hayom. Now I didn't know it when I first saw it, but this is nogea. And it goes to Pasuk Dalid, Perishis Perik Aleph Pasuk Dalid, and it says, Vayavdel Elokim bein ha'or v'bein ha'choshech. And one of the ideas is that anything you see in Sefer Bereshis, when it appears the first time in the Torah, tells you that that's something intrinsic. It's like people wonder, is gold something that's intrinsically valuable, or is gold only something that you've been educated to think gold is valuable? Well, when you walk around the world, if you go to Spain and you go to South America and you go to South Africa and you go to the Incas and the Aztecs and everywhere in the world, gold is it. There was never an international conference that said, okay, let's all agree gold is it, just like there was never an international conference that said, let's make a 7-day week. Isn't it a strange thing? Scandinavians have a 7-day week. In the Congo, there's a 7-day week. And the Japanese have a 7-day week. Everywhere going. When was the international conference deciding we're having a 7? The answer is it wasn't until it's called the Torah. And the fact that the Torah is created and the world's created in 7 days means that is an inherent, it's intrinsic in the running of the world. There's going to be 7 days. By the way, the Chinese, at one point, sometime in about the 15th century, which none of you know anything about anyway, so you don't know if I'm telling you the truth or lying, right? But let's say I'm telling you the truth because I'm a rabbi. The Chinese at one point tried to institute an 8th day in the week. They tried to make an 8-day week, and it resulted in a civil war with a lot of blood. That's what happened. We're not going to have that, right? They tried to institute, but it's a strange thing. You should wonder about that. Isn't that weird? Everybody's got a 7-day week. Why does everybody have a 7-day week? The answer is because that's inherent in human nature for whatever reason. The same way gold, the Torah says in Parshas Bereshis, it mentions gold twice. It says that's the land where there is the gold, and the gold of that land was good. It was not only gold, it was good gold. So gold is something that is inherent to the human in human nature. I'm sure you must have wondered, certainly as a kid, probably as an adult, do we do this by nature, and this means yes, and this means no, or is that something we're trained with? Right? I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the answer is. I'm pretty sure that it's inherent in human nature. Pretty sure that this is a negative, this is a positive. I know you'll quote some psychology study from Bina magazine, which I never look at, and just I could say it, but I'll quote some disaster or machine gun model from Zman, and okay. So my wife always asks me, do any women read this magazine? It's always about espionage, a new nuclear submarine, some counterfeiting ring. There's always something like that's got kind of men's bittul Torah. That's not women. Women is more Bina. Bina's much more fun because there's always something about ADD, a diet, a recipe. Some woman is waiting for a shidduch. Some woman not getting along with her husband. And then some woman who's upset with Bina for not being like Zman. So they always have. It's always basically the same stuff. So there's an idea that happens to have hit right now. That hits right now. The Torah says Vayavdel. HaKadosh Baruch Hu made a split. That means there is no equality in Judaism. There's no equality. This is extremely important. We are not threatened by conservative, and we are not threatened by reform. Nobody takes it seriously. One of the most insidious threats to authentic Torah Judaism is the movement of feminism. Feminism is much more of a threat because it creeps in certain areas. Now, I know that Kollel wives are working and Kollel wives are supporting, but I don't think that Kollel wives are doing this because they see feminism as, well, I should be working because I could also. It's because you obviously have, Torah is a value by you. You value Torah, and because you value Torah, so you've had the wisdom to make the correct choice to work and so help support your husband while he's doing the most important thing any human being could possibly do. So that's a very, very good choice. I was once, when we first moved here, when we first married, I broke my foot. I had gone out to play basketball early on in marriage, and my wife watched me a couple of times, and at a certain point, she said, no more basketball for you, you're on probation. I said, why? She said, because every bad midah known to man comes out on the basketball court. You're a balgaiva, you get angry, you're selfish. She went through a whole list, which was all true. Okay, so I took a 6-month hiatus from playing basketball, and after 6 months, I got down on my hands and knees and begged her to play. She said, yeah, it was an Erev Shabbos, I went out and broke my foot. Okay. So, it was during the doctor's strike. So, I had a cast on my foot, and I had to go to have the cast changed after 2 weeks. Foot was still broken, I had to have the cast changed. It was a makeshift doctor's office because they were striking. And the doctor happened to be from Chicago, an American guy from Chicago. So we hit it off right away. I think we were both Cub fans. And we hit it off right away. And secular. So he's examining my foot. He takes off, he's examining my foot. He says to me, so what do you do? I said, well, I learn in Kollel. He says, well, what do you live on? How do you support yourself? So I said, well, my wife works. So he goes, well, I guess somebody has to, huh? Just like, I guess, very cynical, sardonic. So I remember clearly my first thought. I will tell you I didn't say this because he had my broken foot in his hands, but my first thought at the time, as soon as he said that, was, you jerk, you. Those 3 words flittered through my mind, you jerk, you. That you went to medical school, somebody paid for you to go to medical school, or you took a loan from the United States government, which is essentially a giveaway. And because it was a value, you were willing to take the money to go through. I'm learning in Kollel because my wife finds it important, my father-in-law, my father, my Rosh Kollel, whoever it is, I'm not asking you for money. Why are you passing judgment on what we consider a value? So a woman who's married to a guy who's learning in Kollel, and she wants to work because she sees that this is the most important thing. If her husband was in medical school, she'd also work to get him through medical school. So there is no suspicion on in those areas, there's no suspicion that feminism is a factor. However, in the world at large, it is very much a factor. In the Orthodox world, I don't know if you're aware of this, in the Orthodox world, there are women who the husband makes kiddush and the wife makes hamotzi. Right? There, the husband makes it. I don't know if you've ever heard of this, and this is much more common than you think. The husband makes kiddush, and the wife makes hamotzi. As I like, what are we supposed to do after you make hamotzi? What, do you want to be a man? I mean, what are we supposed to do? Clap? Oh wow, she pronounced it so well. And the husband bakes the challah. I mean, I'm not sure exactly how. Oh, Chaim, those challahs you made with the poppy seed were really good this week. And what's the point? What are you doing? You're not happy with who you are. You're not happy with what your role is. But you should know it's very widespread. It's very widespread. When I spoke at a shul in America. When I was one of the first times I ever spoke in a public speaking, there's a shul where my wife is from, a small town. And before I got up to speak, the Rabbi of the shul comes over to me and tells me there's an Orthodox woman in the shul. An Orthodox woman in the shul. This woman has helped the Reform movement design write a Pesach Haggadah. And in the Pesach Haggadah, she changed it to Baruch At Hashem. This is a Shomer Shabbos woman, Shomer Shabbos, Kashrus, Taharas HaMishpacha, the whole works. But just absolutely cranking cup on this feminism issue. So the Rav said to me, at the time, he said, listen, when you speak, I had spoken there a couple of times, he said, when you speak, maybe stay away from men and women's issues. I mean, you could if you want to, but she'll get upset. So of course, I spoke about men and women's issues, and I was dafka very, very positive about it. I didn't say anything deprecating at all. And the Rav came over to me afterwards. He says, was she upset about that talk? And she was also on Simchas Torah, where they carried the Torah around. So we would go up the aisle in that shul with the Sefer Torah on the right shoulder, and the women would reach over. It's a very small mechitza. They would reach over to kiss the Sefer Torah. So as I walked past, up the right sideline, I immediately took the Sefer Torah and shifted it to my left shoulder. I want to have none of these women are touching the Torah. So you should know that this is and this is why this letter came out for the Rabbanim now about this movement, what they call open orthodoxy, and particularly Maharat, which is some institution where they give smicha to women. Now, what the Torah is telling you is that you may be talented, and nobody's saying you're not, and you may be smart, nobody's saying you're not, you may be very, very intelligent, nobody's saying that you're not. But you have a role. A wife has a role, and a husband has a role. The husband is the foreign minister, the wife is the minister of the interior. That's the way it works. The husband is the foreign minister, the wife is the minister of the interior. And you should know that in chas v'shalom in Yiddishkeit, there is nothing deprecating about women. We do never make deprecating statements. We may joke about it, but there's nothing deprecating about it. We don't mean it in any way, because we know for every statement that you hear in Chazal that you think may be insulting to women, I'll quote you one or two that builds her up. So if it says, Nashim daited kalas alehem, right? So first of all, we explained that a couple of years ago, that Nashim daited kalas alehem means that they don't have the heavy mind. That's why they're able to multitask, right? They're able to multitask. On the other hand, it also says, B'schus Nashim tzidkanios, Klal Yisrael got out of Mitzrayim. Right? It doesn't say about the men. It says the men were a bunch of lowlifes. That's why they had trouble. The women got them out. It says it was the women who didn't worship the Egel. Right? The women were, so for every negative statement, or what you think is a negative statement, which none of them are, by the way, I'll show you a positive statement. If a woman can't be an Eid in Beis Din, it's not because there's anything wrong with women, it's because a woman is, number one, subject to a certain amount of pressure that a man might not be subject to. She could be, because she is physically weaker, she can be threatened and intimidated more easily, which makes a lot of sense. And number two, a woman may see and perceive things differently than a man do. A woman in Thursday, I always tell the guys, don't discuss Gemara with your wives. Whatever you do, don't discuss Gemara with your wives. Because the women are going to have a take on it, where the women are going to intuit the truth, and they're going to wonder, why are you draying around so long before you get at the truth? Or what are you saying? Kvetching here? We all know what the hell, what's with the kvetch over there. And therefore, it's not a good shalom bayis thing. The husband wants to tell you what he learned in the Gemara, and the wife is, then all of a sudden you slip into a feminine take on it, a woman type take on it, which HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave you that gift. And that is one of the reasons why women don't learn Gemara. Now, if you listen and you understand this well, the basic reason that women don't learn the Gemara, Chazal say, because a woman will misuse it, she'll distort it. Doesn't say because she's not smart. Doesn't say that anywhere. Doesn't say the woman doesn't learn Gemara because she's any less smart than men. It says she doesn't use it because she will somehow use it in the wrong way. That's what the Gemara says. There's a deeper explanation, not a deeper explanation. I think it's the same explanation, and we'll take it to a certain depth. Do you know that certain musician, I'll name him, Paul McCartney, with the Beatles. You know that Paul McCartney, ad hayom, cannot read music. Paul McCartney cannot read music. Now, it could very well be Paul McCartney cannot read. I don't know. But Paul McCartney cannot read music. Okay? Now, if Paul McCartney was taught music, do you think the music he'd produce would be as good or not as good as the music that he did produce? Would he produce better music if he could read the notes? And the answer is, if many areas of life you will find that there are certain people who do things intuitively or instinctively, and what they do instinctively, they do much better than what they do mechanically. So for example, in baseball, when a baseball player was in a slump, those of you who are, I'm assuming you're all from America, those of you who are not Americans, you should be, but those of you who are not from Chicago, you should also be, but if a baseball player was in a slump, so one of the expressions they used to use in sports is that when he's standing at the plate, he's thinking too much about what's going on. He's thinking about his swing, and am I swinging this way or that way, how's holding the bat? And they say, don't think so much about what you're doing, because what you do instinctively will be much better than anything that you could be taught mechanically. And if you think about it too much, you're going to ruin it. It's working well, you're going to ruin it. The same thing goes for art. I know nothing about art, I don't paint, but there are people who can paint, and if you would force them into a square to paint the way you want them to paint, it wouldn't work well, because they're much better intuitively. Women intuitively have a kesher with ruchnius and know what's right and what's wrong. Women have an instinctive and intuitive, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave the women a gift, that you know what should be done and you know what's right and what's wrong. And every smart husband knows that if his wife is bothered by something, especially in the area of ruchnius, he ought to listen to his wife, because his wife has a sense of what's right and what's wrong. For a woman to go and break that down into the logical steps, there's nothing to gain. You're already doing it. Why break it down? I mean, mainly there's no need for what you would learn Gemara for. A man needs Gemara, because if he doesn't learn Gemara, he's going to end up in prison. Whereas a woman doesn't need it. A woman without Gemara, a woman without that intellectual building of the Gemara, she's going to draw the right conclusion already. So why break it down, and why fix something that's not broke? Now, that being the case, a wife has to know, a woman has to know, you have a task, you have a tafkid. And your tafkid is no less important than the tafkid of the men. And in many ways, your tafkid is more important, because you're the backbone of the home. The fact that a woman is in the home is not a gnai. She's the minister of the interior. The husband is the foreign minister. Now, one thing you have to bear, just parenthetically, when it comes to shalom bayis, never, ever, ever. My wife has told me that she's heard this, and this is so wrong, where women will have avrechim and avrechetz will have arguments with each other, that the wife says, I'd like to buy a new sweater, and the husband says, well, I don't think we're budgeted. And the wife says, listen, I'm the one earning the money. That means that you got a much bigger problem than a sweater. You got a much bigger problem at that point than a sweater, because it means that you're not communicating properly about what your marriage is. You're earning the money. You're earning the money for you. You're earning the money for us. I mean, first of all, al pi halacha, whatever money you earn belongs to the husband. All right, we'll leave that off. The husband would stay home, lie in a hammock, and drink beer all day, and you work, and you're not allowed to give away money to tzedakah, and he is, because it's his money. You know that there's halacha. You can't give more than a token amount that your husband allows. You're not allowed to give to tzedakah. And a collector of tzedakah is not even allowed to accept from a woman a large amount, more than what's considered a token amount. I don't know what a token amount is nowadays, 5 shekels, whatever it is. That's the halakha. It belongs to your husband. But for a woman to say to her husband, listen, I'm the one working, so I make the decision about the money. You got a lot of much bigger problems than a sweater. That means the two of you have to sit down. That means your marriage, you're not communicating properly. Not communicating properly in your marriage. That's how you decide, because you're working, earning the money. That's how you decide. That's not how a marriage is supposed to run. So the fact that you're working is because you're working for an ends, because to you, what your husband is doing is of value. More than that, there are certain women who should work outside the home because they'll be a better mother. There are certain women who work outside the home because they'll be better mothers. There are certain women, just like there are certain men, who can't learn all full time, and if they learn half a day, their learning will be more productive than if they have to be learning a full time. Because a man who gets up in the morning, he does not have the natural kalim, or never developed them, because so often he did not have the ability, and he gets up and looks at a full day of learning, then he's not going to learn a minute. because every minute is torture. A man who knows he only has to learn an hour or 2 hours, he'll learn that with enthusiasm, because after that, he'll be able to give expression to whatever his natural tendencies are. Now, you have to be careful, because all these things need a personal Rav who gives the hadracha, tells him when he should learn, when he should not learn. I will tell you a personal story. When I was in Kollel, and I don't know if I mentioned this or not, I was learning in Kollel, and I'd been in Kollel about 5 years full time, and at a certain point, the Kollel decided that they were learning a certain subject in the afternoon. Now I did not want to learn, they wanted to learn subject A, I wanted to learn subject B. And the problem was that I knew that I'm a Nogea B'Davar, because subject B was probably a second choice of what I should have been learning at the time. And subject A was what the Rosh Kollel was a Nogea B'Davar, because he wanted me learning what everybody in the Kollel was learning. So I decided I'm going to go ask an unbiased opinion, what he thinks I should do. So there's a mashgiach in Eretz Yisrael, one of the biggest mashgiachim in Eretz Yisrael, and I went to him, and before I left the house, my wife said to me, you could go ask him, but only if you promise you'll do whatever he tells you to do. Because she sensed that if I hear what I want to hear, great. And if I don't hear what I want to hear, then I'll figure out a way that I will hear what I want to hear. And so she sensed it correctly, and she said to me, you could only go if you promise you do what he tells you to do. Yeah, of course I will do it. Why wouldn't I do that? That's what I'm going to ask, right? Which means that I wasn't going to do that. Okay. So I went and asked this man. So he did. He sat me down. Didn't know me. He knew who I was. He'd seen me around. Didn't know me. Sat me down. He took a list of about 8 to 10 references of people who knew me, and he said, come back in a week. He called every single person on the list, my parents, my Rabbeim, a couple of chavrusas. He called everybody on the list. I came back a week later, and he said to me, you asked me if you should do A or B. I tell you should do C. And C involved starting to get involved in teaching, which was nowhere in the plans at that point, and I was devastated. Because at the time I was learning well in Kollel, and what I call learning well was I was making use of the time very responsibly. He felt and picked up on me that I had hit a certain plateau in my development, and that by learning full time, I'm not going to break through any further in the plateau. There'll be more information, but not a higher level of learning. And he felt that I will grow more if I get involved in teaching. I will grow more in my own personal learning. And therefore, the only reason I listened to him is because I promised my wife before I left the house. It's the only reason. I was Kecheres Anishbro when I came home. And the only reason I listened, that's why I started teaching at Or Samech. I only listened to it because I had promised my wife. I don't know where she pulled that out, but that's why I started teaching. Now people always ask, and how did it work out? So you can never say in life it was the best thing I ever did, because you don't know what the alternative would have been. No, I don't know what the alternative is. I don't know the best thing, I know it's the worst thing. I know it's what I had to do, because I asked Das Torah, and that's all I could possibly do. All you could do is, you don't have a suffix, so what does the Kodesh Baruch Hu want from me? Kodesh Baruch Hu wants, go ask Das Torah. I asked Das Torah, responsible Das Torah. That's what he told me. That's what I did. Did it work out well? Didn't work out well? They will find out after Be'ev Esrei. Kodesh Baruch Hu decided it worked out well, didn't work out well. But you should know, there are men that hit a point where by having less time to learn, they'll learn more. There are certain women who, by having less time in the home, they will be better mothers. And that does not cast any aspersions on their capabilities. It doesn't mean they're any less good, efficient a mother. To the contrary, they're a very good mother, because she realizes that to be a good mother, I have to be out of the house a certain amount of hours a day. And that will make me they'll make me a better mother. But she's not out of the house to develop a career. If she's out of the house because she wants her career as well, then that's already that's a touch of feminism invading our values. That's not part of our value system. But the ikar is that the idea of the feminism also, that it should not make its inroads, which it usually doesn't. However, people are affected by their society, and sometimes you will find this sort of thing. Okay, the ikar point is what I said about the money, that should never come up. That should never come up in a marriage. Well, I've learned that's not a factor in the decision of whether or not you should buy a sweater. It's not a factor. You're working because you and your husband have a shutfus, and you're working because the two of you are working in the same store, you're in the same life, and you're trying to build something together. Whether or not you should get a sweater has nothing to do with who's earning the money. Whether or not you should get a sweater is whether or not we can afford it, and that's a joint decision that we're making, regardless of where that money came. It would be like saying something, well, my father's the one that supported us, that supports us, therefore we should be able to buy this, that, and the other. Nobody with any common sense would say such a thing. That's very important, that a husband has to recognize his wife is clever, what Americans call smart, but a wife is clever. And she needs a stimulation. I know women who are better mothers because they go to a shiur, just like you're doing right now, and they have you need a little ruchnius, especially in this lifestyle. You need ruchnius. That's an absolute need. She needs a little stimulation, and she needs a career, but she needs the career because I want to be seen as a career person who's advancing. I need the career because that will provide me with the stimulation that I need to be a better mother and better wife and serve God. That's my job. I'm not in the career because I really want to advance so people will say I got the title professor in front of my name. Once it crosses into anything that has any honor or prestige in the career, that's different, for a woman especially. For men, they often need that, otherwise they won't go into the career at all, they won't do anything. The woman needs the stimulation, that's okay. But once she crosses over, that becomes a value in your life. That wasn't what Eliezer found in Rivka Imenu. She wasn't a career. Yes, I want to be the top water drawer in Haran. There was no career. What do you call it? It was all about being the wife of Yitzhak Avinu. Okay, we have to stop.